So, this being Memorial Day, as we, of course, pay our respects to those in the armed forces who made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our freedoms, I got to share just a quick story about one that is a little closer to home, and that would be my father-in-law, who did not die in service. But I just wanted to, he did pass away several years ago. He was in the United States Navy, was a rear gunner on a torpedo bomber. If you're familiar with those little short, stocky torpedo bombers, they had a little turret you climbed into in the back with a machine gun, and that was, of course, to try to fend off airborne attackers primarily. But he also, so when I started dating my wife, I was fascinated, always have been, with military history, and in particular World War II, my father having served proudly and my brother in the Vietnam War. But nonetheless, I wanted to learn more after my wife had shared that he had won the Distinguished Flying Cross as a member of the Navy during World War II. And I wanted to know just more about this story that involved the sinking of the Yamato.
The Yamamoto.
That's Yamato. I think the admiral was Yamamoto.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think the ship was.
That's right, the Battleship Yamato and Admiral Yamamoto.
Yeah. But nonetheless, so Mr. Gill was a member of the squadron that sank the so-called unsinkable Yamato. And many historians today theorized that had we not taken out that ship, it would have kept churning towards the mainland, and the outcome of the war would have been totally different. So this was pivotal, and if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong about this, don't hold me to it, it was steaming towards Midway to join in that conflict, that battle, and it was thought that if it arrived, it would have been a different outcome. Anyhow, I managed to get Mr. Gill to talk about it one night, even though my wife, I was dating her at the time, we were in college, said he's not going to talk about it. And I managed to get him to discuss it one night. And for those of you that are thinking maybe it was after he had a few drinks, perish that thought. The man didn't put a drop of alcohol in his mouth. I'm telling you. He just didn't. I'd like to think he trusted me. I'd like to think that he thinks that, or he thought at the time, that my interest was sincere. And so I got him to start talking about it one night. And of course, I'm just fascinated. I mean, this is just living history. I would argue that I'm more appreciative of that now. You know, at the time, this was back in the mid-'70s. I don't know, and I was just a younger person. Today, I don't know, my level of respect, let's just say, is intensified for what he went through. But nonetheless, he told a story in his words where they had a misfire of the torpedo. And he said that was common. These airplanes were new, and they just had mechanical problems, and it was common for you'd be out in the middle of the sea en route to wherever the mission was, and they would go at the Yamato, by the way, every day and take pot shots at it. And I want to say that it had 5 layers of steel to comprise.
Oh, it was huge. It was their biggest one.
Yeah, and these 5 layers were thought to make the ship virtually impenetrable and unsinkable, except in the bow where it all came together. And so he told me that they were out one day, and what they do is they'd go out and they'd take pot shots, try to slow it down, and they'd also, in the turret, they'd overfly some of the islands en route, which were loaded with snipers. And often these islands were those that would be inhabited as camp bases for the sailors who would stop there, set up camp. Anyhow, the snipers were there waiting for them, right? So every day, en route to the Yamato or other ships, they would fly low on the islands and spray the trees to try to rid them of the snipers. And you could tell that still kind of affected him, emotionally having to do that. But he said that one day this torpedo misfires, and the question was asked by the skipper to the crew, what do you want to do? He actually asked my father-in-law first. I'm looking at the article, believe it or not. And he asked my father-in-law first and said, what do you want to do? And he said, hey, you're the skipper. You make the call. And they said, let's keep going. And so at the time that they came upon it, they noticed a big flume of smoke coming from one of the stacks. And that would mean that there was an explosion in the engine room. And so the theory was that that misfired torpedo found the bow. Now, that would be divine intervention, in my view, and went right through there, and that's ultimately what caused it to sink. I think it had a crew of about 2,700, if I'm not mistaken, that all went down with that ship. And Mr. Gill took photos of it. And I have those in my possession, of that ship on fire as they left the area, departed the area. Just incredible. So he told me that night, by the way, that when he weighed in with the skipper and said, it's up to you, he said he honestly thought he wasn't going to make it, that he expected we're going to do everything we can to try to take this ship out, but I'm pretty much concluding that I'm not going to get out of this thing alive. Now, I don't know how old he was, 19, 20, 21 years old, but it's a true story, and it's told by somebody who was there, and I am blessed and privileged for him to be my father-in-law. He passed away about 10 years ago, and for him to share that story. Now, the medal, I'm sad to say, was lost. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, it's about 20 years ago when he passed away. His Distinguished Flying Cross, which he kept all this stuff locked up. He didn't want to boast about it. He didn't want it. It's just the way it was. And I think a lot of those guys that came home from that, they just wanted to kind of forget it. We did our job. Let's get back. Let's get back to what we planned to do before we went off to serve our country, which is raise a family. And he said he even got interviewed as part of this thing. He says, I just want to go back and live the quiet life, Biloxi, where he's from. But Katrina took out the house and the medal and his discharge papers and so forth. And so I have requested and have some folks working on that to try to restore that for my wife's purpose, as her father. So anyhow, I just want to share that story. Thought the listeners might enjoy that, but that's a Biloxi boy right here in Mississippi that was involved in the sinking of the so-called unsinkable Yamato. It had 22 feet of armor plating. It's what they were briefed on. So they never really thought about sinking it, rather slowing it down. That was kind of the object. But when they saw that thing go, the plumes of smoke as they came up, just like explode in front of them, they knew, well, where the heck did that come from? And they just surmised it had to be the runaway torpedo. Special generation, was it not, of people to which we should be so grateful, especially those who paid the ultimate sacrifice as we approach Memorial Day. Little digression there. I hope you enjoyed that. Andy and Jackson said you were presented with a unique opportunity. Thanks for sharing. Thank you very much, Andy. You're right. I am. And just was, if you can imagine, just through the years, just always marveled at that and how incredibly brave he and all, frankly, of our armed forces people are to go right in the middle of battle like that and thinking I'm not going to make it out alive, but I got to do this. Incredible. I can't fathom being put in that situation. But thank you, Charlie Gill, for your service and all those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, for sure. We'll take a break right here. When we come back, our friend Russ Latino, president of Empower Mississippi, joins us in the studio. We're going to talk a little bit about the ballot initiative process and lots of other stuff. Stay with us.